After my divorce, I bought a new house to start over. It's small but nice, with 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it sits on a large lot that gives me plenty of space to relax outside. The garden is simple, and the quiet street makes me feel safe. After I moved in, I started to notice strange noises at night, especially in the laundry room. At first, I told myself that these noises were normal for an old house because it was built in 1974, but they persisted and kept happening every night. After a few months, I got to know my neighbors. I was busy with my own life, enjoying being single and living alone, but they were very interested in me and wanted to know more about me. I generally avoided becoming involved in neighborhood drama by going to work and returning home, but one evening, when I was outside gathering dandelions, I asked the neighbors to the west if they had any information on the previous occupants of my property. One day, Sandy and I started talking about the house's previous owner, a nice old woman who lived here before me. She was known to be a bit of a recluse, mostly keeping to herself and collecting a lot of things, almost like a pack rat. Her name is Sandy, and she is an attractive, amiable older woman. Jim, her husband, is a retired construction worker who used to operate heavy equipment. Sandy explained that the neighbors became concerned when they noticed that the elderly woman had not been seen in her backyard for a few days. She usually spent time there caring for her garden every day, so the neighbors decided to do a wellness check. They went to her house to make sure she was safe and well, and they discovered her sitting in a recliner. It appeared that she had passed away peacefully in her sleep, which is the most important thing because I knew her name and I frequently talked to her about whatever was on my mind. Perhaps I should have approached her in that way, but I can't be certain. One day, after a long, stressful day at work, I returned home feeling worn out and frustrated from handling too many truck drivers on the job. Their container was the most important one in the yard, and handling it all day left me exhausted. When I got home, I took a long, hot shower to relieve my stress, and afterward, I made a simple dinner that made me feel better from the inside out. I then turned on one of those old-fashioned TVs, which was playing classic sitcom shows from the 1960s and 1970s. And the last thing I remember before falling asleep was Andy Taylor saying something like, "Not all that glitters is gold." I settled into my recliner with the TV on, and soon after, I was startled awake by a loud noise. I heard old pots and pans that I had kept on a shelf in the laundry room fall to the floor, and as I passed the kitchen, I saw that the microwave clock read 3:33 a.m. I looked again and remembered that this time was important. It matched the month and year my father was born. A shiver ran down my spine and I felt both confused and curious. I slowly moved toward the laundry room door. I listened carefully for any sounds, maybe a soft voice or footsteps on the floor, but the house was completely quiet except for the sound of my own breathing. When I reached the laundry room, I switched on the light. The room was dim at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw a strange sight. All the pots and pans that I had stored neatly on the shelf were now scattered on the floor. They lay in a jumble, some close together and others far apart, as if something had knocked them over in a hurry. I picked up the pots and pans and put them back where they belonged. Then I went back to my room to try to sleep, even though I still had about an hour and a half before work started. Once I laid down, I couldn't fall back asleep since I was wide awake. I got up and made myself a warm cup of coffee. I started getting ready for work, slowly taking my time because I still had plenty of time before I needed to leave. I'm still feeling anxious about what occurred today. My first driving lesson was a little stressful because I had to pay close attention, and by the end I was exhausted. In addition, I haven't been feeling well, so I went straight home wanting to rest. I grabbed a warm blanket, laid on the couch, and tried to relax because I was still thinking about driving. I also decided to practice some driving rules using some apps I had downloaded. The house was quiet because I was home alone. There were no cars in the driveway, and my front room had plenty of natural light from a large window. It had been about 2 hours since I had last moved when I heard a loud, heavy tap on the front door. The mail had already arrived, and we weren't expecting any shipments. Additionally, I hadn't heard a car stop outside recently, and our village has seen a lot of charity workers knocking on doors. It's been happening so frequently that it's becoming overwhelming because I was feeling exhausted and drained from my driving lesson, and I didn't want to deal with another charity worker. I also felt a little uncomfortable saying no again, so I stayed quiet on the couch and hoped they would leave. They knocked twice more, each time louder than the last time, and I became uneasy. After a while, I heard footsteps coming down the front steps, so I slowly moved to the window to see who it was. Where they were going, but when I looked outside no one was there. I've read plenty of creepy stories and watched enough scary movies to imagine all kinds of things, but like most people I tried not to overthink it. I told myself it was nothing and decided to make some lunch. I walked to the kitchen, which faces the backyard. There's a big window and a set of patio doors, and both had the curtains open, letting in plenty of light. As soon as I stepped inside, something moved in the corner of my eye. My gaze shifted to the window, and for a split second I saw the top of someone's head. It looked like they were crouching as they moved past, trying to stay low. My body froze, but my eyes kept following them, my heart pounding. Then they appeared at the patio doors. I could see them clearly now, and it was obvious they were about to try to get inside. He was a tall man with a big build, wearing a tracksuit with a black jacket over it. The moment he saw me, he took off running. I heard his footsteps as he rushed up the side of my house. I ran back to the front room and looked outside. I saw him sprinting down the street until he disappeared from view. Since I'm so brave, I immediately called my dad and begged him to come home. He didn't hesitate and came right away. Then we checked the doors and windows to make sure everything was locked. We decided to call the police. They arrived soon after, asked me questions, and checked around the house. They said they would keep an eye on the area, but warned me to stay alert and keep the doors locked. About a week ago, my husband and I moved into our new house, which we purchased from his parents, who had inherited it from their own parents. Since this is our first time owning a home, we are both thrilled about it. My husband grew up here, and I recall spending the night in his room rather than the main bedroom when we first met, but I always felt heavy and uneasy in some areas of the house. Since my husband doesn't believe in the paranormal, he typically ignores any strange feelings. After 8 years of living in 3 different apartments, raising 2 amazing children, and taking care of our little noisy chihuahua, we finally moved back to this house and now own it. I always knew that his grandfather and his uncle had died in this house on the side of the bed where I sleep in all of our previous apartments, but when we moved here, everything changed. Instead of sleeping next to me as usual, she would push open the bathroom door and scurry to the far corner behind the toilet to sleep. It seemed as though she was avoiding my side of the room completely. We tried numerous times to get her to sleep next to me, but to no avail, so we moved her bed to my husband's side of the bed, and now she sleeps there contentedly every night. I can't help but notice that something about this room is different, almost as Since we started unpacking, little odd things have happened that make me question whether I'm going crazy. For instance, I might put something down and put it away for a while, and when I return to it, the item has moved a few inches. I usually blame my stress and ignore it if the memory of his grandfather is still present and makes the space feel a little off. I'm not sure if it's just the move or something about this house, but my daughters have been in this house a lot because their grandparents look after them while we work. However, since we moved in, they have had problems sleeping and frequently wake up in the middle of the night. They've moved twice before. At 3:28 a.m., my 6-year-old eldest daughter woke up sobbing and told me about a nightmare in which she saw everything happen. She was unable to stop weeping, so I held her until she felt a bit better before gently putting her back in bed. I remained with her for a few more minutes until she eventually relaxed and fell back asleep. I then went back to our master bedroom and lay down in bed when I felt a heavy, dark sensation in my chest, like a heavy weight was sitting directly on me. I tried to close my eyes to get rid of the feeling, but it persisted. I tried to fall back asleep, but as I lay there, I feel really afraid. I hope that these weird sensations will soon pass so I can sleep soundly once more. I moved into a 1924 house 2 months ago, and since then, I've had a few strange experiences that I can't explain. One night, I woke up feeling uneasy, but I didn't know why, so I went to the bathroom and then to the kitchen for a drink. As soon as I entered, I noticed that all the cupboard doors on one wall were open, some were slightly open, while others were wide open. I knew that I hadn't left them that way before going to bed because I always close the doors and I like to keep things tidy. A few weeks later, I was in my home office, where there was no TV, no music, just my work computer. Suddenly, my dryer buzzer went off, and I didn't give it much thought until I realized that I hadn't done any laundry and hadn't been in the basement for at least 3 days. Normally, the buzzer only sounds once when the cycle is finished, but for 15 minutes or so, I sat there listening and staring at my office door. I knew that no one else was home, and that my cats were upstairs and not close to the basement. The following day, I was still thinking about it while chatting to my sister on FaceTime, but I forced myself to ignore it. Eventually, I made the decision to go down to the basement, where I found my washer and dryer covered in a rough, gravel-like substance. The floor above them is wooden, and there was no dirt or gravel anywhere else. It was odd, but I tried to figure out why, and I blamed my cats even though it didn't seem like their fault. A week later, while I was working in my office, I heard a noise from the front of the house. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to get my attention. Curious, I got up and went to the living room, where I noticed something odd. My attic door was open at 6 o'clock. The door is always closed and latched, and I hadn't touched it. Trying not to think too much, I pushed it shut, made sure it was locked in place, and returned to my desk. Not even 10 minutes later, I heard another noise. As I made my way back to the living room, I noticed that the attic door was open once more. I was uneasy because there was no reason for it to open on its own, especially not twice in a row. I made sure the door was securely latched before leaving for work, making sure that no windows or doors were open to prevent a draft. My cats were with me in the office, so they couldn't have touched the attic door. However, yesterday, when I got home, I noticed that my front door, which I never use, was slightly open. I checked everything carefully, and the handle and screen door were both locked. I live alone with my cats, and they aren't opening doors, but I do feel like I'm not alone in this house. My landlord is friendly, so I asked him about the history of the place, and he told me that no one has ever died there. It was his family home, and he inherited it. He also told me that no previous tenant had ever mentioned anything odd, which made me wonder if I'm just dreaming or overanalyzing. We started by removing all the carpet and priming the walls so they were ready to be painted before we moved our belongings from the old house. First, I set up my air mattress in the living room. When we started removing the carpet, I moved upstairs into the bedroom that my wife and I would share, and that's when strange things started to happen. I moved in at the end of October, but my wife, kids, and pets didn't join me until the end of December. I spent many nights alone in an empty house. I thought I saw a shadowy figure in the corner, but my vision isn't the best. One night, I felt like someone was watching me, and I heard a light turn on and off by itself. I moved my air mattress downstairs, and I told my wife about it, but she didn't take it seriously. After a week or so, nothing happened, so I assumed I was just being paranoid. I sent my wife a picture on Snapchat with the caption, "It's easier to sleep with a sword," and I moved my air mattress back into the bedroom, since it was the only room with carpet. In the middle of the night, I felt like something jumped into bed with me and cuddled close to me, nearly knocking me off my air mattress. I was afraid to sleep without multiple lights on, and I felt safer with the bedroom door. I informed the spirit that I was afraid and prayed for protection after locking it. I even joked with it, "Enjoy the house while I'm at work every time I leave." After that, nothing much occurred for a long, just some gentle, odd motions. The spirit didn't seem cruel, more like a mischievous ghost. One day before school started, my son was using a powered movie theater seat when our cat Asuna got her tail stuck in it. It was really bad, so my son called me at work, so I rushed home. When I got there, I broke the chair and its mechanism while attempting to free her tail, which was broken in several places and looked awful. A few months later, my son moved in early, which was nice. I haven't told him about the strange things I experienced. We also brought our cats upstairs, and it's fun to watch them explore. By then, the veterinarian had shaved her tail. My cat never purrs unless my middle son is with her, and he wasn't there. But one night she jumped onto my bed and started making strange noises and purring, getting very close to my face. I decided to record it so I could show my child and laugh about it. When I played the video back right after I said, "Get your rat tail out of my face," I heard a clear laugh in the background. I still get goosebumps every time I think about the 3 touching events that happened in my room.